Interested what you think of it all, Parnell, as a political strategist. Watching the way that the Harris campaign reacted to Trump's win, you know, Harris did a Clinton and wouldn't come out on the night. And she didn't necessarily have to concede defeat that night because the result wasn't entirely clear. But at the very least, she could have come out and said, look, thank you to all of you here tonight who've given money and time and whatever to my campaign. We'll come back and regroup tomorrow when we have a better idea of what the results look like. It seemed to me like they hadn't even taken into account the idea that Trump could win that election.
That's right. And that is exactly what that moment spoke to. She was not prepared for the possibility that Trump might win that because her team had told her that they were on the right track. So it speaks to a real failure of campaigning. They were thinking all along that if they didn't define her, if they kept her as a sort of joy candidate, a vibes candidate, that was going to carry them through. And there were plenty of people, myself included, who along the way wrote about this, talked about this and said, look, she is not saying what she actually stands for. She's given lots of opportunity to say, you know, so why did you change your mind on fracking? And she could have said, I changed my mind on fracking because XYZ information came to light, and you change your mind when new information comes to light. She didn't. She just doubled down and said, I haven't changed my values, never gave any explanation for herself, insisted on only doing interviews with friendly parties. And when she did interviews with more challenging parties towards the end, because clearly the strategy wasn't working and they were starting to panic, she didn't change her message. So it was an absolute cluster of a campaign. And I have spoken to my team about this as well, because, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, she didn't have long enough to define herself. She had 100 days. Give it to me, I could have made something happen
and
there.
all the time as vice president
That's right.
as well.
Well, look, OK, so let's say her time as vice president was overshadowed by the way she became the presidential candidate, with Biden being basically decrepit. So you have to make a change. You have to run a campaign that really sets apart, defines what you're for, but then keeps its ears and eyes open to the way people are responding to what people need. And instead, she made that classic mistake that Hillary Clinton also made of just closing down all of the sources of information and saying, we are going to win it on the vibes. Very much a voice referendum strategy also, I might say.
It's a bit like, you know, Joe, you start to believe your own bull, S-H-I-T, and, well, that's the end of it.
Yeah, I believe it or not, I'm right in the middle of writing a column exactly to that effect, that this is exactly where the Voice campaign went completely and utterly wrong. It was because none of the people on the Democrat side, on the Harris side, actually knew, or perhaps even, it seems, believed there was such a thing as a Trump voter. They'd never seen one in the wild.
Exactly.
So they said, well, no, we've got it. All my friends are voting for the Voice.
Nobody I know is voting for
No one I know is voting for Donald Trump. No, this is just... And the mind effing thing is that this was always going to happen. And I went back because I thought, am I being gaslit myself, right? But I went back. The very first thing I wrote, the very first column I wrote after Biden won on November 7, 2020 was, and it was literally said, Joe Biden may have won the battle, but the war is just beginning. There are 70 million plus Trump voters who voted just for Donald Trump. Let's not forget, Biden got elected on the back of a coalition that ranged from actual communists to, you know, neoliberals on Wall Street, right? They were all the people who voted. They didn't vote for Joe Biden, they voted against Donald Trump. Everything else that Trump got, the second highest vote in US political history, was just for him. And you've got all those voters there. Where do you think they're going to go? Are they just going to disappear? And yet it seems for the next 4 years, they quite literally just forgot about them. They just forgot they were there. They didn't speak a language that they understood. They didn't really do anything for them. Biden was meant to be a very moderate to the right of the Dems, old, you know, sensible old man who could connect with blue-collar voters and everything. What did he do? Did the Green New Deal stuff and then just sort of shuffled off and no one could understand anything he was saying. Kamala Harris, during that same campaign, put out this most disgracefully condescending video cartoon thing where she explained the difference between, you know, equity and equality or something. This ridiculous, absolute horse. And again, what happened? The people who she was supposedly raising up blacks, Latinos, working class people, they all turned against her in droves.
Yep.
Latino men went against her. A majority of Latino men voted for Donald Trump. So much for Puerto Rico. So much for Trump being a racist. And a record majority of black men voted for Donald Trump as well. And again, in record numbers. And not only that, but we say how all the polls got it wrong. The polls were getting it wrong in plain sight. If you actually look at the polling number, they tightened towards election day, but Trump was still ahead in the battleground states. And so people were seeing this. You could watch the actual data saying 2 + 2 = 4, and they would go, oh, it must be 5. Must be 5, because no one I know votes for Donald Trump. And so it was the most unbelievable. And again, on my amazing podcast, The Real Story, we had a guy, a mate of mine from the Labor side of politics, Labor strategist, 4 weeks ago now, come out and say, Donald Trump is going to absolutely smash it in. You just look at this stuff and look at where they were out before, look at where they're out now, and they've actually got him winning. If they've got him winning by a tiny bit, that means he's in by a landslide, a whole bunch of other factors. Like, who would come out and vote for Kamala? If you didn't have to go out and vote, why on earth would you vote for her? What position does she have that could possibly motivate anyone except a fully microchipped Democrat supporter to come out and actually vote for her? You cannot think of a single reason.